Growing up, I was always involved in some sport or another, but it wasn't until I was around 11 until I started really training and taking anything seriously when I got into BMX racing. And we actually hired a coach when I was pretty young, and I went full force into BMX racing, really giving it all my devotion and all my attention outside of school. And at 13 years old, I actually won my first national title. And that's pretty much what I did, was devote my life outside of school to training to becoming the best BMX racer that I could, in hopes to possibly turn pro one day. The first time I ever went to the gym, I was 15 years old, and I was absolutely amazed. I thought it was one of the most beautiful things in the world, where somebody could go and push themselves to become better. It was actually one of the first times in my life where I just seen a way of improvement. Nobody or nothing around me I seen was getting better in any way. It was more they were a victim of their own circumstance. But when I went into the gym, I found it as an outlet or a way to improve myself, improve my health, improve my strength, and even improve the way I looked. When I was 16 years old is when I became pro, and just shortly after that, about 3 months later, I ended up tearing my ACL, my MCL, my PCL, and both of my meniscuses. And it took me a year to recover from that, and my first race back after that, I actually ended up re-tearing my ACL, MCL, PCL, and both my meniscuses. Another year to recover. First race back, ended up breaking my heel. Also, during that time of injury, I became actually a personal trainer and devoted a lot of my time and energy into studying the human anatomy and what it was capable of, and different training techniques and diet techniques as well. I also really devoted myself into the gym and started training for physique competitions, and really learning a lot about how to make the body look the way I wanted to look, by certain training and diet techniques as well. After that, I ended up getting all healed, immediately went back into racing. But when I got back into racing, I ended up actually skipping my physical therapy, because at the time I was 19, 20 years old, thought I knew absolutely everything about training that there was, and went back into training and built up a lot of habits of bad movement. So from what I did know, I ended up just getting more and more pains throughout my body, from my ankles to my knees to my hips to my back, all the way up to my shoulders and even my neck. I still continued to train even though I had the pain, and I just did my best to block it out, and I kept pushing and pushing, and the pain just got worse and worse, to eventually I was at the point, I was 24, 25 years old maybe, a professional athlete that had so much pain in his body where I couldn't sleep at night. I had so much pains in my hips and my back, and it was really affecting my performance on the BMX track as well. This was when I knew that my whole perception and my way to go about fitness and health completely had to change, because I was doing something wrong. I ended up learning about a man named Ido Portal, who is really a master of movement and has devoted his whole life to studying and understanding movement. And I realized that these pains were coming in my body from just improper movement and not knowing how to use my body properly. Between Ido Portal and a program called MoveU from MoveU.com, I ended up learning so much more of how the body works and how to properly use the body. So I was relearning really how to use my whole entire body, but I never stopped training and pushing myself. And eventually this caused things to break. I ended up breaking my collarbone, I ended up exploding my knee, cracking my femur all the way up. So it took me until the point where I couldn't raise my arm above my head, I couldn't walk, and I couldn't do anything without any pain, and everything was just breaking around me, not only just physically, but emotionally as well. I began learning how my physical pains was directly affecting my emotional and mental well-being. The more I was in pain physically, the more I was in pain mentally and emotionally. So at this point, I began to just devote my life into healing myself. I couldn't raise my arm above my head, or I couldn't walk or do anything. So I really had nothing but time and energy to devote towards my healing. I began changing the way I do everything, changing my habits in my life, and changing my whole entire perception of how I moved and how I thought. I began to rehabilitate my physical body, which was helping me think clear on a consistent basis. And the clearer I thought, the more I was learning about how to properly move, and then I began meditating and learning and doing different types of breathing exercises. The more different types of breathing exercises, the clearer that my mind was working, the better that my body was feeling. And that's really when everything began to change for me in really every single area of my life. I constantly started noticing that all these negative pains, physical and emotional, were just improving and getting better and turning into positive outlooks and positive opportunities for my life. And this really opened up a whole life of opportunities and changed my whole perception of not only who I was, but what I was capable of and what was important to me and what was going to have me living the most fulfilling, enjoyable life that I could possibly have. Really living the life of my full potential and living and creating my absolute best life. So the more I began to dive in and to learn about my own movement patterns and to correct my movement patterns, and not only correct my movement patterns but correct my thought patterns as well, through these different physical therapy exercises, stretches, yoga, and so much breath work and breathing exercises, I began to really rehabilitate my mind and body. The better my physical body performed and felt, the better I felt and performed mentally. And this was huge because it started improving every single area of my life. I began to realize and notice what was truly important to me, who I was, and what I really wanted to accomplish in this life. It really cleared a complete vision for me of what was truly important and where I wanted to take this life now that I had a life full of opportunity instead of a life full of pain. This is when I began to devote all of my time and energy to study and learn all these different practices of breath work, from meditation to either body movements and exercise, that what's going to have me feeling my best, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. I spent about 2 years of not being able to do what I love or push myself physically, but I devoted that whole time into learning how I was going to better myself and to dig myself out of this rut of physical pain and mental agony. At the end of this 2 years, I decided to create this program of everything that I learned through this process. I wanted to make all the pain, sweat, and tears mean something. Not only mean something to me, but mean something to other people. So I devoted this time into creating this program of taking all of the top habits and practices that I've learned of what gave me the biggest impact, what gave me the biggest results with the least amount of effort, what made me feel my absolute best to create the life of my dreams. I am still studying, learning, and practicing all sorts of different methods almost every single day in hopes to continually evolve and to expand my own knowledge. And the more I learn, the more I will expand and evolve my own program, and I will constantly keep updating this program to give you my best knowledge through my experiences and through everything that I learn along the way. Humans tend to find some of the most enjoyment through our own progress, especially if that progress has a nice deep meaning of why they're doing it. So I encourage you to dig deep within yourself and to find why you're wanting to become your best self. If it's for you, for your family, for the world, really know your why, and that's what's going to help you stay motivated throughout this whole program and to absolutely do your best. When you give your best, you get your best. So good luck and enjoy.